What if every human had a time limit on daily speech? The concept of imposing a time limit on daily speech for every human could drastically alter the way societies function, communicate, and even think. While the idea might seem unconventional, it raises intriguing questions about the role of speech in our lives, the value of communication, and the broader impact on interpersonal relationships and societal dynamics. Here's a look at how life might change if every person had a daily speech limit. Reinventing communication styles. If humans were restricted in how much they could speak each day, it would force people to become more intentional with their words. Conversations would likely become more concise, focused, and meaningful. People might prioritize clarity and precision, carefully considering every word before speaking. As a result, we could see the rise of more thoughtful, well-constructed dialogues and a reduced emphasis on small talk or trivial exchanges. Impact on social interactions. Social interactions would undergo a significant transformation. In casual settings, people might rely more on nonverbal communication, such as body language, gestures, and facial expressions, to convey messages. This could foster a deeper understanding of emotional cues and potentially make people more attuned to each other's feelings. However, it might also make certain social contexts feel stilted or awkward, as the ability to chat freely or engage in back-and-forth conversations would be limited. New approaches to work and education. Workplaces and educational institutions would likely need to adapt to this new reality. In professional environments, meetings would become much more focused and efficient, as every individual would need to manage their speech time carefully. Brainstorming sessions, group discussions, and collaborations might be more structured, with people needing to plan their contributions in advance. In schools, students would be encouraged to listen more attentively, as they would have limited opportunities to speak. Teachers might find creative ways to engage students through writing, visual aids, or interactive learning tools. The shift toward a more listening-based learning environment could foster better comprehension and critical thinking, as students would be expected to absorb information more passively than actively participating in long-winded discussions. Emphasis on written communication. With daily speech limits in place, written communication might experience a renaissance. People would likely communicate more through emails, texts, social media posts, or even written letters. This could lead to an increased reliance on technology for facilitating communication, with messaging apps, social networks, and digital platforms playing a central role in human interaction. Additionally, the written word might take on a greater sense of significance and permanence. People would be more thoughtful about what they wrote, as it would become a more powerful medium for expression than casual conversation. Effects on personal relationships. Personal relationships would also evolve in response to a speech limit. Couples, families, and friends might find themselves engaging in fewer but more meaningful conversations. With limited time to speak, the focus might shift toward truly listening to one another and appreciating silence in ways that were previously neglected. Relationships could become deeper and more profound as individuals would need to make the most of their allotted speaking time. However, there could be drawbacks as well. Misunderstandings might arise more easily, as not all emotions and nuances could be conveyed through limited words. Frustrations could build up if one person felt they were not able to express themselves fully within the constraints, possibly leading to tension and emotional strain. Redefining public speaking in media. Public speaking would undergo a fundamental shift. If politicians, celebrities, or thought leaders were bound by a daily speech limit, their speeches and interviews might become more succinct and impactful. Press conferences, debates, and public forums would likely change in format, focusing on brevity and directness. The media might embrace new methods of storytelling, relying more on visual content and multimedia to convey messages that would otherwise require extensive dialogue. The role of social media influencers might also transform, as platforms like YouTube or TikTok could shift from long, verbal content to shorter, more visual or written posts. Influencers may focus on delivering succinct, high-impact content that makes the most of their limited speech time. Changes in legal and political systems. In the legal and political realms, the speech limit would have profound implications. Courtrooms, for instance, might become much quieter places, with lawyers and witnesses forced to condense their arguments into shorter, more focused statements. While this could potentially streamline legal proceedings, it might also limit the ability to explore complex issues in depth, affecting the fairness and thoroughness of trials. In politics, campaigns and debates would need to be more strategic. Politicians might rely on succinct messaging, catchy slogans, or other forms of communication, such as digital platforms or even nonverbal tactics, to get their points across. The emphasis on brevity might make political discourse more accessible, but it could also limit the depth of political conversations and reduce the opportunity for nuance. Mental health and cognitive development. With fewer opportunities for spontaneous speech, people might find themselves turning inward, processing their thoughts and feelings in ways that they previously relied on verbal communication to express. This could lead to increased self-reflection, as people might need to find alternative outlets for their thoughts, such as journaling or creative expression. On the flip side, the restriction could lead to frustration or isolation for individuals who heavily rely on verbal communication for social connection. Children's cognitive development might also be impacted. Young children, who typically learn by imitating speech and engaging in verbal exchanges with others, might have fewer opportunities to practice language skills, potentially slowing their language development. However, they might also become more creative in finding new ways to communicate, fostering more innovation in language learning and social interactions. A society of quiet reflection? A society with speech limits could cultivate a quieter, more reflective world. While speech would no longer be taken for granted, individuals might become more mindful of how they use their words. It could inspire a deeper connection to the written word, art, and silent contemplation. In this society, people would perhaps value silence and deep listening as tools for building more meaningful connections, though it could also lead to a decrease in spontaneous conversations that can be a source of joy and human connection. Conclusion. A new era of communication? If every human had a daily speech limit, it would force profound changes in how we communicate, relate to one another, and structure our society. While the focus would shift toward more efficient, intentional communication, it could also bring challenges related to emotional expression, social dynamics, and personal relationships. This thought experiment highlights how central speech is to human life and invites us to consider how we might adapt and thrive in a world where the art of conversation is redefined by constraints.